Hello, everyone, and welcome to another, or I should say, the first week of the Metagame Book Club for Track 2. I'm used to doing the overview. So, what we have with going on today is first we want to thank everybody who's helped us out. So, special thanks to the Games and Simulations Network, as well as the Neville instructors for helping us out and giving us some examples in World, which we'll see in a little bit. So with us today, we have a special guest speaker, Matt Miller. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
We also have a couple panelists today. So there's myself, Chris Lukes. Hello. There's also Hubert. And Matt. There's Hubert.
Sorry.
Matt has already introduced himself. So there's Kay. And we also have Christina.
Hello.
And we also have Tanya.
Hi, everybody.
And we have Trish.
Hi.
So without further ado, we'll get started. So again, this is week 1 of the Metagame Book Club for March. It's going to run all the way to April 12th. And so our book is The Multiplayer Classroom by Lee Sheldon. We're going to use that as our basis, and then all of these types of presentations, which will happen each Wednesday, will be extrapolating off of that. So for the first week, we're going to read levels 1 through 9, because remember, he does levels instead of chapters, and that basically comes out to pages 1 through 92. So if you haven't already done this, please go to Metagame, the Google Plus community. Also post your intro, and then also go to the Book Club Google site for additional resources and different additional information. Most discussion will happen in this Google Plus community, and we'll post discussion questions on the week 1 page. So we'll show them to you later on tonight, and then we'll go ahead and post them there for your responses as well. All right, we're going to turn it over to Kay for things to know.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so we're going to go over some terms. Now, the thing about it is, with this book, if you've noticed, here it is right here, but basically what he does is he makes it like what we call a sword and board video game. So I'm going to screen share real quickly. Moving over. And there, hopefully you see something that looks like a David Winter's cottage. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Lovely.
Okay, so the thing about this is really what he based this book on. He went, hey, I'm going to do my classroom like a game. And the one that he used is, it could be World of Warcraft, it could be Dungeons and Dragons. It's really taking some familiar, what they call sword and board aspects of it. So we're going to have our little vocab quiz, and we're going to be talking about some of these things, and we'll also show them as you go. So first up, XP. What is XP and why does it matter? Does anybody want to jump on that one?
Well, it's the credit that you get for completing quests or activities, and it matters because it's kind of the feedback that you get that you're accomplishing something. And you always get more. You never get less.
And on my screen right here, if you look at this bar on the bottom, this is my experience bar. This one, and this character hasn't been along very far. See, this little blue filled in spot, it only is up to, whoa, it's like maybe 8%, 7%. And I have to fill it all the way up, all the way over to the other side to go ahead and get 100%. But I will tell you, as I am running around on this character, I will be continually looking at this experience bar. I will be continually going, how close can I get to this? So that's what we mean by experience. Now, for the next one, BLAPs. And I'm only calling them BLAPs because Dr. Scott Nicholson out of Syracuse University, that's how he talks about it. And we are going to go ahead and put up some links for some works that he's done so you can see more about BLAPs. But Chris has it up on his screen right now, so I'll turn it over to him so he can explain a little bit to you.
All right, so this is in a game called World of Warcraft, and this is an example of basically an achievement board they have, which sort of shows you what we mean by these types of badges, leaderboards, awards, and points. So what we have here is a summary, so you can quickly see what are my recent badges I've gotten, or recent achievements I've gotten. The one I just got is this one here, I should say, on a metric ton of missions. So it means I've done 1,000 garrison missions. Woohoo! So in other words, it means I send my followers out and do a lot of missions. So I got 25 points. It shows me what day I got it, and you can see there's different badges that scaffolded my way up to where I just currently got. And so really, this is what you see: is you see how it breaks down here to show you all the different things that are going on here. And this is just one of the many ways that games have found a way to motivate players, because there are players that only play this game specifically so they can check off every single little achieve that's on here, because that's what floats their boat. So that's what you have here. So you have badges. You can see, for those of you that like quantification, you can see I'm obviously not very much into achievements because I've only accomplished 831 of 2,438 possible achievements that are out there. And so you can see each achievement has points associated with it. It keeps tally for it, not only for myself, but also I can look at my guild, so I can look at helping out everyone else. And also, it also gives me statistics on myself to see how good or bad I am performing in game. So there's lots of things here that you can pull from and look at different information.
Okay, so with just that little start of the vocab quiz, we're going to turn you over to Matt Miller. Now, Matt Miller is not showing his face, and the reason he's telling us that he's not doing this is because of a bandwidth issue or possibly a connectivity issue. Now, we don't really think that actually having to, broadcast from Cairo, Egypt should be a problem, but he didn't want to take the chance. So, we're going to say, take it away from Matt, our colleague from Cairo.
Thanks. I just think that experience has shown from here that live video tends to be a bit of an issue. So I didn't want to push that bandwidth problem too hard. And it may not be from Cairo, it may just be from my house.
Okay, come on, I was playing it up.
I appreciate it. Anyway, what I wanted to bring you today was what I've been working on, which is a world called Nimmergorp. And I call it a world brought to you by iteration, because that's the core feature of my experience of trying to gamify my classroom. And I'll talk about that in some more detail as we go through here. I am Matthew Miller, and as Kay said, I work at Cairo, or in Cairo, at Cairo American College. One of the courses I teach, and the one that I'm gamifying, is Introduction to Computer Science. And I've been here for 2 years now. This is my second year really with a gamified classroom. I've played with the ideas a bit before this, but my adventure started about 2 years ago when I ran across the video that I forgot his name, the fellow at Bozeman Science, who did a TED Talk about his gamified classroom. I'll get there in just a minute.
Okay, no problem.
I'm jumping ahead of myself.
Yeah, and I was going to say, since it's a programming class, it's all about iteration anyway, right?
That's part of where the idea came from.
Cool.
Yes. So cool that you picked that up. And iteration, to me, I was thinking about this idea a lot last year, and what I came up with was that we circle back to the same things over and over again. But iteration, the key difference between just circling around is that you're also moving forward. And so you end up in this ever-growing spiral. You have to get back to where you started at a higher level, and in order to do that, you need feedback. And then you get this spiraling effect, and it just grows and grows. So the three keys to iteration, to me, are that you take really small steps, you take a lot of them, and you need feedback. And so that's what my journey into gamification has been about. To begin with, the first step that I took was the fellow up in the upper left corner is the TED Talk about his gamification. And I watched it, and I got really excited about it. But he didn't give enough details that I could actually do anything. He got me all excited because he showed these leaderboards and the leveling system that he had, but he didn't talk in detail at all about what he did in the classroom, just how he was scoring it and the effect on the kids. And I have to think, because he's a really well-known, really great teacher, I have to think he did more than just points and badges and a leaderboard. But he never went into details. And fortunately, right about that time, this great guy called Lee Sheldon published this book, The Multiplayer Classroom. And I found it while I was searching on gamification after this guy excited me about it. And I started reading, and that had the details, like we've been reading, that really got me going. So what I did the first time, the first year, I said, I'm going to take baby steps on this. I'm not going to go try to leap into this all at once, other than the fact that I want to frame it as a year-long game. That was my one big step. I don't want to do one unit. I don't want to do tiny bits of this. I want to do the whole year. But I'm going to start out with just a physical game. I'll do some dress-ups. Thus the guys with the funny hats.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
How is he going to tie this in?
yeah, and by dress-ups, what exactly did you do?
I dressed up in wizard hat some days.
Okay,
Cloak,
cool.
when it got a little cooler. I wanted to dress up as the dragon for the part where the dragon comes in and takes them away and puts them on a mountain and makes them do things, but I couldn't figure out a costume for that in time. So I just had giant dragon pictures and eye close-ups and interesting things on the projector for that bit. Initially, everything was physical. I had a big map on the wall that I filled in slowly as we explored the world. It was still based on worksheets. It was still group activities in the middle of the classroom, physically walking around. And they were telling me, the feedback was right away that this is much more interesting than sitting down at the computers all the time. So they liked that. The feedback from the administration was, the kids seem to be really engaged, but you still need to be documenting their progress.
Yes.
And what we use is Moodle. So
Okay.
I started working with Moodle and trying to frame it within the context of my my world, which I initially thought about doing a modern-day fantasy kind of, you're working in something like the CIA.
Nice.
I didn't get that one off the ground fast enough because I had to do too much research for it. That's going to be next year at this point. What I ended up falling back to, because I know it so well, is a fantasy world.
Yep.
So in the world of Nimmergorp, everything runs on spell energy, and spells or programs are what everything works on. But the spell energy has been corrupted somehow, and things are falling apart. So a lot of what the kids have to do to begin with is fix broken programs, which was a way to scaffold things and get them so they can start with something and not have to create it from scratch.
And we just had a comment that a space theme would be really cool, too.
That could be really fun. Yeah, you could go lots of places with this one.
Oh, yeah.
So after a little while, I thought, this is working really well, the kids are engaged, but I'm feeling like I'm all by myself. Both on the programming side, because this is the first year last year that I had taught a programming class, full year class, and on the gamification side. So I went out looking for people in the environment in both sides of this that I could work with and learn from. And I started picking up folks that I could learn from in the programming side, and then I started running into communities like EdWeb and the gamification for teachers, by teachers, Google group, and then eventually Inevitable Instructors and all kinds of other wonderful folks that I could learn from and interact with, and built a bit of community around it. And the one thing that I brought from that first year, the really big lesson that I learned, was keep looking up the mountain. There's a goal at the end, and you've got to go up. This applies to the teacher and the students. I found for the students, it's the counting up instead of counting down, because if you're standing at the top of the cliff, you start with everything and you look down at where you could land if you start losing points as we frame our usual grades. That's really scary. But if you look at it as a journey up the mountain, and every step you take takes you closer to that top, it becomes a much friendlier kind of feeling. And the students in my class fed back to me that that was true for them. When I came in, and I borrowed Lee Sheldon's line completely and walked in and said, "Good morning, everybody, you have an F. And you can level up." And the story that he tells, the reactions that the students had, was exactly the same in my classroom. There was a moment of panic, and then when I said, "And you can level up," there was a complete shift, and everybody went into that mode of, "Okay, bring it on." So it really changed the feeling. And I had to keep this mountain in mind as well, building it partly because of the small steps aspect. Keep the steps small going up the mountain so that it's not too much work all at once. But also just to keep it positive. I can see that mountain, that peak up there that I want to be at the top of. And sometimes it's really frustrating that I'm not there yet. And I got to remind myself I'm going up the side. I'm getting closer every time I change things. For the second year, I started saying, what are this? I'm on my small steps now. More steps that I can take. What else can I do here? And the big change that I made for the second year is to implement a engine. I was doing some other work unrelated to gamification in the Adobe Education Exchange. And I ran across a man who had built and was in the middle of enhancing a game engine based on top of WordPress, which I knew pretty well. It's called Game On. And so I got a copy of that and started working on it, and this is what I'm using this year. So you can see on my screen, this is a screenshot of Nimmergorp as it exists right now. And you can see on my screen we have a stats window in the upper left. We've got this little fellow in the upper right corner is my avatar as Lore Master Relim in the game. And I get to put up announcements across the top for the players, and then they've got their maps that they can get into the game with. There's player tool menus, upper right corner here. It gives me a whole lot of structure for presenting my material, without very much work on my part, because it's just based in WordPress. It also gives me a stats board for the players, and again, the avatar bigger picture. They get to see where they are right now. Down here, they've got a list of all their quests that I've created for them, and these are status where they are in each of the quests. They can send me notes as the game master, And then there's a whole bunch of other features here, rewards and damage and badges they've earned, and they can go look at the full leaderboard for everybody. And I also have a overview as the teacher. This is my board that I get to see, and it tells me in a glance what level each student is at, whether they've moved into a particular area. I expect that they're in a different part as we move through the classes. It tells me how much experience they've accumulated, and then gold, honor. I don't use the damage and the minutes much, but there's a whole bunch of different ways I could use it. And then I can send them messages, and then up at the top I've got tools to manually correct things or give extra bonuses as we go through the game. And this is an example of one of my quests. I've highlighted several different areas. The yellow, green, and blue are not, or purple are not usually there.
Okay.
But I wanted to highlight some pieces of this. The yellow bit, I give them just a little bit of a reward in experience points when they first come across a new quest and when they accept it. Initially, they would come up and the green and the purple would not be visible. It would just say, accept this quest, a green button there. Although the rewards part is listed, so they know when they encounter a quest, how much is this quest going to be worth? And then they accept it, and this green portion opens up, and they get to see the instructions for what do they need to do for this quest. And the button at the bottom changed to complete. And when they finish it, they hit complete, and the green button or squares over here briefly appear to indicate in a kind of flashy way, you've accepted this quest, you've won this quest, you're done with this portion of the quest, and here's your reward. And then it opens up the purple section, which is mastery. And you'll notice mastery is substantially worth more than the previous portions. Mm-hmm. And that's because, at least in my quests, the mastery ones tend to be either reflection pieces or they are application. Take what you've learned and now use it someplace else to validate that you really got it. And I really wanted to make that something that they opt into, not something that I require. But in order to encourage that, I also make that worth the most of the individual quest. The most of the reward goes into the mastery portion of it. So it's structured to encourage them to go through that. Whoops. I want to...
Matt, I have a couple questions just based on... I work for a public school system, and of course grades come into play, and I'm just wondering what's the relationship of these color codes that you have and the mastery and the various XP that they earn and how you've color coded them here and how that relates to a letter grade, or do you have to give a letter grade, and do you expect all your students to reach the mastery part, or is that something beyond? And if it is beyond, how does all that relate to grades?
In my classroom, I do have to give a letter grade. And I chatted with my administration about this extensively because I am in a private school. So I'm not restricted nearly as much as I think I would be in the public schools in the US. And I chatted with my administration quite a bit about it. And they were very supportive of my basic approach. While I was learning about gamification, I was also learning about the work of Dan Pink and internal versus external motivation. And I wanted to make this as much internally motivated as possible. And that's why I don't require mastery in most of the quests. I do require mastery early on in the year. There's a sequence they must go through that introduces them initially to the game world and how to work with the programming tools that we work with and that sort of thing. And they have to go through all of that. Mastery is required for each quest before they can move on to the next one. But once
And
they're in,
is there still some kind of an EOC, end of course exam, or
I'll get
beyond?
there.
Oh, okay.
I'll get there. Kind of long-winded answer, sorry. So my administration was very supportive of the internal motivation part. And so my grades are completely divorced from performance in the game. What I studied with Dan Pink is that money, which in school translates directly into the grades, that's what we give people in return for their efforts, right? Is not a motivating factor. It's in fact demotivating for anything that requires higher order thought or creativity, and above a certain point. So I said, here's how I'm going to grade you guys. I'm going to have an interview with you every 2 weeks. We're on a block schedule, so that means 5 classes. And I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first question is, what is your grade? And the second question is, why? And the answers that you can give me for the first question are, I gave it my all, which is an A. I'm trying, I'm working on it, but I know I could do better than this, which is a B. I'm not trying very hard, which is a C. I'm wasting my time, which is a D. Or why are you here? Who are you? Which is an F. I've never had anybody choose D or F. And validly, I've not had anybody actually come in and behave at that level. I have had students choose a B and an A, and a couple of times over 2 years, I've had students choose grades that I thought were a bit inflated. And when they got to the Y part, we talked about it. And then I pulled up their player board on my side of it, and we discussed what they did, and we looked at their blog, which is one of the things they deal with for mastery. And they eventually, we came to an agreement. They either showed me, you just didn't see what I was doing, or they said, yeah, I guess I really am not working that hard, or whatever it was. I've also had students come up very consistently giving themselves Bs when I think they really should get an A. They're really working hard, doing well, making progress, and the same kind of conversation goes on. They're remarkably remarkably accurate, I think, in assessing themselves. Now, do I think this model would work in a public school? I do, because the guy who invented this is Mike Scotchko, and he's working in a public school in LA. And it works really well for him too. So I think it can work, but you also have to have an administration that's willing to run this with you, because if they're not going to be supportive of your back on that, that's going to fail real quickly, I think. But that's how I do it.
And I was going to say, I was looking these things up as you were going, and here is a picture of Mike Scotchko. And I have it right there. And since it's on the internet, I'm going to assume that he has approved it, because it looked like he was enjoying himself. And I hope it'll come up, and it says, if you Google the Mac Lab, gamify your curriculum.
Yep.
But back to you, Matt.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do is just show you a bit of Nimmergorp. So this is what the player side looks like if you're logged in. You can see no messages from admin right now, but this would turn red or green depending on the kind of message that you get from me. We've got the same progress bar here showing me that I have 455 of the 500 points that I need to get to the next level, and details about my particular status in the game at the moment. As Kay had talked about earlier for XP, I can hit my stats to get more detailed. And this is the entire detail of what quests that I have open. Each one of these gray bars in the middle shows me which status I'm at in the quest. So for this stocks per quest, I have just encountered the quest and accepted it. I haven't moved on to work on it at all. I have an inventory, things that I've purchased or been given, and there is a piece in the game that has been developed this year that I haven't used yet, where you can gift things that you have or sell them to other players. We're not using that part yet. Rewards I'm not using at all in minutes, but the badges, I have a few badges. As you move through the game in levels, you start out as a nooblet, and then you become a noob, and then
Nice.
eventually you'd be a noob lord, and so on up the game board. The top level is a lore master, and that's what the kids all want, absolutely. Some of them are motivated by getting those badge levels. Some of them really prefer the leaderboard, and they spend a lot of time looking at who has the most gold and who's got the most honor and who's got the most experience and so on. So it's all there for the kids who really are motivated by that sort of interaction. And then I've got my player tools, including the map case, which is how they navigate the world. I'll take a quick look at that. So this is the digital version of the big map that I had drawn on the board initially. And they start out in the city of Assad, and then something happens when they're doing their quests there, and they get bumped from the city down to this village in the south of Segol. And in Segol, there's various different things they can find to do. When you choose one of them, then it gives you links to those quests that I had talked about. And then, as they earn their gold in the game, there's an emporium that they can come in and get various different things. There's a part of the game that involves some cards, and they've got special cards that they can buy to enhance their abilities during that part of the game. There's also various different goods that they can get for the general game, and some of these, like Stealth Snacker and Invisible Entrance, have to do with class management. There's not usually food allowed in the classroom, and I have to take attendance. So Invisible Entrance lets you come into the class late for free, and the Stealth Snacker lets you eat next to the computer as long as you're careful. Some of them, like Sudden Intuition, have to do with the game, and they can get a hint from the game master about a particular puzzle or something they're working on, unrelated to an actual spell or program. This would be a general logic problem that they're stuck on.
So Matt, I have a quick question. So now that you've brought up hints within the game or the gamification system, so we are curious. So in your classroom, did you see any sort of collaboration or work among the students, especially as they got stuck or they were comparing their own performances against their peers, if that was any motivation for the students?
Constantly. I let them know early on, actually as part of the introduction sequence that they have to go through, that they're encouraged to work together. And
is there any incentive or reward for doing that within the classroom?
I tried that the first year. I actually had a set of badges that I awarded related to what I saw for collaborating going on. And the reactions the students had in my class were not terribly positive. They were, at best, they were just a meh. That doesn't really float anybody's boat. And a couple of times I gave a reward for something that I saw, and they kind of looked like they didn't like that I had done that. They were much more motivated by actually helping their peers, and just the peer getting it and moving forward on the quest was enough to be all the reward that they wanted. So I've pulled back completely from giving those sorts of buffs and or rewards of any kind related to helping your peers out.
Interesting, but I guess if we think about what happens in actual games themselves, I think that that logic is true. You see a lot of people who go onto the forums and post things and answer questions that other players have posted without any tangible rewards attached to it. So I think it's you see that translation between the games and what you do in the classroom.
Yeah, and it's very contrary to a very traditional classroom. We don't call that collaboration; we call it cheating usually, right?
Oh
But
yeah, and in online learning, right now the methodology for discussions are usually do an original post and then make sure you respond to 2 or 3 other people. Rather than just having them do that, we make it a requirement.
yeah, which feels so artificial to me in
Hmm.
the I don't like that feeling at all. I think if we can make it engaging to be involved in what's going on, we don't have to do that. And that's what I have found here. Programming itself, the class is a self-selection, um, hugely self-selection bias here because nobody takes it who isn't already interested in
Hmm.
doing it. So in that sense, I have a very nice scenario. I'm excited because next year I get to do a required class, and
What class?
it's design technology from the IB curriculum, and it's also because of it's coming from the IB, it's externally moderated. So I get to experiment with some of my. It won't be fully gamified, but it will be more along this line than a traditional classroom is. So I'll be curious to see how these play out in a more traditional core area class with requirements and external moderation.
And I think Tanya had a question for you too.
I was just kind of curious about the male-female ratio in your classes because these are programming classes, and of course there's a lot of press right now about the lack of females in these kinds of courses.
I don't have any girls at all. For the 2 years I've
Yes.
done this, I know. I have had girls come in to the after school club, and the first year that was very tentative. And the only ones that came in were from middle school. The second year, this year, I've had a couple from ninth grade come in, and I'm hoping that we just sent out our registration forms for next year, and I'll get to come back and see those in a couple weeks and see who's signed up. I'm really hoping I get some girls next year because it will balance the classroom a little bit. But right now I don't have any.
Matt, I remember from when I was in Cairo at that school a long, long time ago, the demographic there is very international, and you also have a lot of, it's very, there's a lot of Egyptian kids, other foreign kids, not just Americans, correct?
That's true. We have a very mixed group.
And your students are gamers, I'm assuming, or are they? Or do you
Oh,
know?
I know for sure.
Yeah.
Several of them, it actually became a bit of an issue, and we had to have a discussion about it because they pull up, as soon as they come in my classroom, they get to their computers, they sit down, they pull up the Nimmergorp and figure out what their next step is and get started on that. And next to that, they pull up a online live stream. And I initially didn't really pay much attention because they were engaged, they were working. And then I started asking, what is this that you're watching? And it's a live stream of one of the big multiplayer online games. and it's the professionals, the kids in China or India, and that's stereotyping a little bit, but that's who I see on the screen is Chinese and Indian kids, and they've told me that's where they're coming from, because it's getting toward evening as we're getting into class most of the time, and they're playing these games live, and so they're trying to keep up with what's going on, and occasionally I'll have to walk over to somebody's shoulder and tap and say, which of the windows on your screen is occupying most of your attention?
What I was going to say is, yeah, second screening, it happens all the time, and it's really interesting because you do also have to wonder about at the workplace, will they be able to second screen? I mean, and don't laugh, I second screen all the time. And it's usually like there's some webinar going on that I can watch, and then at the same time, but I have to answer the emails, and we multitask a lot.
Well, I wouldn't say you're multitasking, and this is actually part of what we discussed. Humans don't generally multitask. We switch task.
Yes.
And that actually slows our brains down, and it makes it more difficult. But for some of them, and for a couple of the kids, looked at that and evaluated it based on what they were doing in the game and decided, you know what, I'm actually going to choose not to do that anymore because this is distracting. I actually really notice. Yeah, that's it, Chris. I think StarCraft is the one they were watching. There are others who really, really are comfortable with it and can tune out visually. I can't do this. I'm one of the ones that has to have a single screen. I have to single task. Absolutely. But they can have that visual activity on their screen, and it's just a comforting little thing on the side. There's no sound related to it. And they're focused on the coding. And I know they're focused on the coding because they're constantly, throughout the class, asking questions of each other as I wander around and listen. They're asking me questions. I'm stuck here, Mr. Miller. What is I think I've got this right. What am I doing wrong? How did I make this call to the database that is just not working? They're engaged with the code side of it. So it was an interesting discussion to have with the kids to say, think about what your style is and how you're doing this. If you're distracted by that and it actually slows you down, is it worth having on your screen even though you enjoy it right now? And to their credit, a lot of them really thought about it. And there's a couple that I think really shouldn't be watching it, and those are the guys that I walk around and tap their shoulders once in a while. But they're not. I'm waiting for them to evaluate it to that point and let them work on it.
And I mean, yeah, I will tell you, we hear that a lot about when we're doing these kind of webinars. Like, how can you be talking and reading the questions on the side and responding to people? And I actually went to one of our communication professors to ask her about, well, how can people focus and then talk and then think, and she said, and she absolutely said it's task switching, and it can be learned.
I think that's true because I've done that as you just described. I do it while I'm in a Hangout or watching a presentation or participating in something online. But when I'm actually working, and programming in particular, I think it's problematic because when you get to a higher level of programming, and I think this would be true for math or history, I'm not sure about English, but I'm pretty sure for math and history it would be very similar. Basic level, not too bad to task switch. But when you get involved with a bigger program, or when you're evaluating something within the context of a section of history, or when you're really looking at math not from a solving an equation standpoint, but from a building structures mentally with math, you have to hold so many different things in mind at the same time. It becomes a real issue to add one more thing to your inputs. Sometimes I'll actually close my eyes just to eliminate the visual input so that I can concentrate on that. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say what's interesting is that how a lot of your kids are actually modeling what I've seen in the industry for programmers is that they have those fun areas, they have those loud areas, they have those different things, but a lot of the larger companies that have the funds to do that, it's very segmented. There's like an active space where they can collaborate and move around, and they do a lot of the second screening and different things like that. But then they also have their little cave. They get back to when I need to really focus. But a lot of our programmers that I've met and talked to, all of them have music going. They all have their own sort of environment they create. A lot of them have the little little action figures and things like that they play with, little stress toys, all the other stuff. To sort of help them keep concentrated, but then give them the diversions, and then go right back on task.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens in my classroom. I've got some kids that come in, they put in their earbuds, they sit down on the couch in the corner, and sit in front of their laptop, and that's their cave. That's their cave space. And then I've got others that want to do it collaboratively, and they're over in the general pit area, and they sit down in groups of 3 or 4 right next to each other so that they can all lean over to each other's computers and look at stuff. Building games, they want to work together. Solving individual problems in the game, they might want to work on their own, and it varies for different people at different rates. It's really interesting to watch.
Well, and it's really cool that you're able to provide that flexibility in your classroom as well, in the space as well. So that's really cool.
Feel very fortunate about that. So that's pretty much everything that I had related to showing off Nimmergorp. Are there any other questions about that?
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just wondering, when before you gamified your classroom, how well did your students do in your EOCs or whatever measure you used to determine that they had indeed learned how to program? I guess you could have the artifact itself, the program, but whatever it was that you used to measure them before game and after game, did you see a difference in their performance, a difference in how well they did perform?
Not on the general exam in terms of how well do they learn programming. The tests we've based off of the American, American Computer Science Professional Teachers, American Computer Science Teachers Standards, and multiple choice, short essay, write some code kind of things. Performance has been very similar. What I have found different is the classroom management and how far the kids go. So I don't have almost any classroom management issues anymore. I occasionally have to walk around, tap on a shoulder, and say, which part of your screen are you looking at? I'll occasionally have to talk to somebody in one of the one-on-one meetings every 2 weeks and say, are you really progressing as fast as you could be going? You were doing faster at the beginning of the year, or one of those kind of conversations. But in terms of, would you guys pay attention, please? In terms of, would you work together in groups? Anything like that has completely disappeared. I don't manage the classroom in that sense anymore at all.
How about their products? Are their products better, the same?
They're the same in terms of how sophisticated they are and how well programmed they are. What's changed is that level is reached at the end of the 3rd quarter instead of the 4th quarter. So in the gamified version, we got through the same amount of material that I had taught in a year before in 3 quarters. And the last quarter, I open it up and say, we actually just had this conversation because we're going to go into spring break in a week and switch over to 4th quarter. What do you want to learn now? And they can open up and pick another language to learn. We've got Arduino kits they can break out and start doing electronics with it or robotics. And what the majority of them this year have chosen is they're working in Unity, which is a programming game engine.
Yep.
And I'm sure some of you are familiar with it.
Yeah.
And they are super motivated to get into this and build their own game.
Mm-hmm.
They fully believe that in a month and a half they're going to have a working game.
They'll have something.
We'll see. They'll definitely have something. But I'm excited to have them do this because it is perfect transference. We will switch to a completely different engine that I am not familiar with, and they'll get to start working, and I'll get to help them troubleshoot and say, that sounds like you need some extra looping going on here so you can test this and this and this. How do you put that in here? So we're going to have a lot of fun. But that's the big difference that we've ended up with is we go through things faster.
That seems really powerful to me because, I'm always hearing from teachers, we don't have time to get through the curriculum. We don't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time. And so that seems like a really powerful reason for teachers to take a look at this.
It could be. I don't know if this would be true everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, I've got a self-selected group. I'm in a private school. I don't know how applicable my experience is, but if it could be replicated, it would be very powerful.
I feel like I've heard it before.
Is this a high school?
Yes, it's a K-12.
Okay, you addressed the administration and how they reacted and, supported and wanted certain things from you. What about the parents? How did they feel about your different kinds of strategies? It's not the way they learned.
No, and actually I haven't heard that line from anybody. I did on Nimmergorp, I did immediately when I built it, I put up a page for parents and another one for teachers who want to see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And the parents page, I specifically talk about the learning theories that this is based on, where it is situated within the greater realm of pedagogy that I could be using. And I also specifically talk about Dan Pink and the autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and the internal motivation and that. And I give them a tour of it during parent orientation night when we invite them in for back to school, and we talk about it when the parents come in and we do the parent-teacher conferences. The reaction has universally been positive to it. Some of them are just, well, that sounds interesting. I hope my son has a great time in your class. And some of them say, I've never had my son come home as a teenager and tell me about his class. So the engagement level seems to balance out the this is not what I'm used to reaction. And again, this being a private school and this being an elective class, I don't know if I get more leeway because of that. I might have a different reaction if I was doing math and I wasn't saying you have to get through this entire curriculum in a year. They do anyway because they're motivated to, but if I'm not saying that, I don't know if I'd get a different reaction, but so far it's been positive.
Thank you.
Can I just jump back to that issue of completing work more quickly? It was in the first case history in the multiplayer classroom, and they talked about that they are getting through more work more quickly. Now, I just found it and then I lost it again. But I knew I had heard that somewhere else before, that wasn't the first time I'd heard someone mentioning that students were progressing more quickly.
Yeah, I think with internal motivation, it becomes a real different story. I read about a school in the eastern area of the United States. This is called the Sudbury method, where they don't have teachers per se at all. The students just choose what they want, and they do what looks like play for 12 years. And as they grow, almost universally, they decide that they need to learn math at some point, and they will learn 12 years of math in a year or two, according to the stories that I've read about this school. So that internal motivation really changes things when it's allowed to work.
Well, Matt, well, we really have to. Oh, you have something else, Trish?
Yeah, a lot of what you're seeing in American schools right now is something called the personalized learning model, where using blended learning and flipped learning, students are more self-directed, which the whole multiplayer idea plays into, because you're the one who controls how fast you move along, and you move on to the next level once you've achieved mastery. Well, even though he doesn't test for mastery, it is built into his quest missions and everything. So something like this would tie in with the personalized learning, which is what a lot of public schools are turning to right now.
Yeah, because you can customize everybody's path. They're rarely at the same spot at the same time. That's actually one of the things that I'm building in for next year, is a lot more variety in the quest options. So it can be very, very differentiated, and everybody can pick what they want. Because I'm hoping to get girls in the class, and I'll be able to tell on my roster how much of this I need to focus on. And I know from studying gamification that there tends to be a stronger desire for more social and less competitive pieces with the girls. I want to build more of those type of quests and more of those type of options for bigger multi-quest threads into the game for next year. That can become a really powerful tool.
Okay, Matt. Grid asked if you could go ahead and share the URLs, and if you do, we'll go ahead and put them up on the Google site also when this is over with, because I think people are really going to want to see that.
You bet.
And thank you very much, and we hope you'll stick around with what will now be our quiz. And it's not really our quiz, but I'll be turning it over to Chris, but it's more to know.
You bet.
All right, thank you, Matt. So next up, more to know, because there's always more to know. So what is an MMO? Anyone?
Massively multiplayer online ...
Yes, that is correct. It basically refers to large games. See, I didn't even get to do my Bueller. So, example, how large are these games? Well, back in 2013, EVE Online, which is an MMO, had 500,000 subscribers. World of Warcraft at this time, same year, was 7.4 million. And Minecraft with 100 million registered users. And they convert roughly 14.3% to actually paying from their free users. So these are what we're talking about when we talk about large groups of games. That's how massive these things are. They are global. There's people from around the world in these type of games, and it really allows you to do a lot of things. There's a lot of social components going on. You can look and see that there's different chats, there's different features that are being pulled up. You can see there's different color text going on because they all identify the different channels that a user is more familiar with. So there's lots of social aspects to these games. So it's not just someone by themselves playing by themselves anymore. It has now evolved where you're part of a group. You're part of a group of individuals who are going ahead and working towards similar goals. So next up, we're going to go ahead and hand it back to Kay.
Okay, so the next word. Now, all these, the more you need to know. These are all just things that you might not be really familiar with if you don't play an MMO. But Lee Sheldon took these features out. So the inevitable instructors are going to be showing a couple different ones. So to start out, we'll turn it back over to Cam, and Cam is going to show you avatars.
So I just pulled up the login screen for my World of Warcraft characters, and so just to show you, these are my different avatars that I have in WoW. So I've got Camoria, which is my main character, my hunter, and I have a monk that's a healer, and that's my main alt, as we say in our guild. And then I have several neglected alts of various kinds, trolls and alliance warriors that are very little. But it shows kind of the range of choices that you have in a game of what you can make your avatar. So just a representation of you.
And they're known as also as characters or tunes. And sometimes, depending on the game, you can really personalize and make it different and special and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so next word up is, we're going from avatars, now we're going to guild. Okay, so does somebody want to show us a guild and tell us what a guild is?
So a guild is a group of individuals who've agreed to band together and work towards a common goal. So what they do in a lot of games is it allows you to group with your friends. Some people's guilds just consist of family members, and basically what it is everyone. Sometimes people come and go. There's always core members, and what it does is it allows you to leverage having the same people, being around the same people over and over and over again. So that's one of the benefits of the guild, is that instead of you playing the game by yourself, you now join a community. You join a smaller group of individuals to play with, and you all work towards a common goal. And that could be, there's guilds for auction houses, so there's guilds all about trying to make as much gold as possible. There's guilds about running end game content called raiding. There's guilds that are focused on achievements. There's guilds that are focused on player versus player. There's guilds focused on a lot of different things that are out there. And what they all have in common is that games have provided different frameworks for people who auto-select and self-select to go ahead and become part of a guild, to go ahead and form this core membership that goes out and helps them be successful at whatever they're setting their mind to. It's a different way to explore it on a social level, and it's one of those things where, again, you get to know everybody, you get comfortable with everybody, and it allows you to have advantages when it comes to going after the more collaborative aspects that are very common in endgame. Because what happens in a lot of these games is that you can get away with soloing them up to a certain point and being alone and just doing it by yourself, but eventually, if you want to be able to access all the content and really fully explore the game, you actually have to be part of a group. And that group could be anywhere from 5 players, it could be 5 players, it could be 15 players, it could be 25 players, and on World of Warcraft you can get all the way up to 40 players or more. So that's the type of thing you see around here, is going ahead and grabbing some different groups together, and you have lots of different tools to help you coordinate everyone that's out there. So, for instance, guilds have shared calendars, they have rosters, they have a common set. There's a common guild bank that allows all the members to have different accesses. That the guild master, the person who's in charge of the guild, it basically allows people to have access to.
Okay, so now our next word coming up is PvE. And you might have seen this in the book. Now, PvE means player versus environment. And does somebody want to take this one?
Okay, I'll run with this one. I don't have any pictures, but player versus environment is when you are placed in the environment and you are not combating other players. You interact strictly with NPCs or non-player characters. And any fighting that you do is against either the environment, which is like plants or something, because I have been attacked by plants before, or you would be fighting um, non-player characters that are the bad guys or the bosses, which I'm sure you're going to go over later. Now this is versus player, where you're playing actual other people who are in-game as a toon, so you would be battling them. But in this case, it's just you against the environment.
And thank you, because our next one coming up is PvP.
I'll go for PvP, although I don't have anything on my screen. As Trish said, PvE is player versus environment. PvP is player versus player. And what's kind of fun about that is that it's unexpected. You never know what the other player is going to do. So there's that element of, what's going to happen here? And you never know. Whereas with the environment, it's a little bit more predictable. It's certainly difficult, but a little more predictable, because the environment is programmed to behave in a certain way at a certain time, whereas you have no idea what is in the other player's head when you decide to go up against another player.
It's interesting when you think about how a game is played out. It's computed, so it's like an artificial intelligence that as you play, the game gears itself to you and your play style in a sense. But when you're player versus player, it's another human being, and you can really tell the difference between something that has been programmed and someone who is an independent agent who is acting purely from their own personal computer that's in their head. It's a different environment completely.
And all I have to think about when it comes to that is Star Trek, and Spock and Kirk playing chess, and Spock going, that wasn't the logical move, and that's really what the difference is a lot of times between player versus environment and player versus player. Okay, so we're going to go to our.
Can I just jump in with a screen share? So I came outside of the gates of Orgrimmar, one of the main cities, and there are people dueling out here. This is one kind of PvP where people just challenge each other.
Okay, so grab your screen, because we're not seeing it right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me. Oh, I didn't click on that.
Really cool to see.
Oh, there it is.
Share. So these guys are really. Oh, I'm kind of in the middle of it.
And this happens a lot, at least in World of Warcraft. Outside the major outside the major areas, people just gather to duel each other, just to test their skills, to practice up, and things like that. So our next one is going to be zones. So who wants to take zone?
I can dig that. So if you look at here on my map, you have different zones here. So there's different pieces of land. So in every game, there's typically a very expansive world. And so you have a map of the island or the piece of the continent that you are on. And you can see each of these zones, typically they're tied to levels. You can only be certain levels to get into these specific zones. When you click on them, you can go ahead and look. Obviously, I've been in this zone before, because usually if you've never been in a zone before, this will all be sort of grayed out. And as you go through the zone, you will be able to start picking up all the different icons and a different terrain that looks here. So you can also see World of Warcraft. There's also multiple worlds that are out there. There's different continents wherever you go, and there's lots and lots of different zones for you to go. So a lot of these MMOs are massive. But not every game has a massive zone. So all a zone really is it's where you're at, and it's the environment in which the actor or the player interacts with.
And that's all these concepts that we're showing you really quickly are things that Lee Sheldon has put into his class. And you heard that Matt did some of this also. I mean, when you're thinking about it, an avatar, you have to pick your avatar. You have to make a decision on what your digital representation is going to be. If you're doing player versus environment, this is usually when the challenge or the quest is given by the teacher. Player versus player, the way Lee Sheldon did it was when the students actually went and competed against each other. And zones, he talks about zones as the space. Now remember, Lee Sheldon didn't do this digitally at all. Instead, he divided up his classroom into these different zones. But just think about it. Think of your favorite fantasy book, and for most people it goes back to The Hobbit. Think about dividing different parts of your classroom into being something straight out of The Hobbit. So let's go to our next one. Okay, so our next one is roles in guild. And what Chris just did now was he pulled up our guild roster. And you can see we had about 10 people on there right now. And I know some of them might also be listening to this too. So if you're out there, IBers, hi. Don't die alone. That's our slogan. Now what Chris is doing is if you pull that up, he's showing what the different ranks in the guild are. And we have some different ranks, and we're inevitable, but betrayal. So we have betrayers, and we have envoys, and we have conspirators and co-conspirators, and and fun names like that. But whatever your rank is really dependent on not only your role in the guild, but how well you've performed in the guild. There's some people who are not going to move out of that affiliate position. Okay, well, there's other people who move up the ranks, and again, each guild will make decisions on and make their own kind of ranking system, and that's what Lee Sheldon was talking about, the rankings, and he divided it up more as if you were designing a video game, but you can do lots of things because this is just only one of our guilds. We have another guild called Rage Quit, and the ranks in that are slacker, passive aggressive, and some other different things. And a lot of people just go ahead and have fun with these, but they usually perform a function. Usually, a lot of these are dependent on access to resources. Okay, so our next one coming up is pugs. Does anybody want to take pugs?
Sure. PUGS is an abbreviation of pickup groups. So just like you used to be able to go on to do pickup games running around your neighborhood, that's basically the same thing you have here in most MMOs. So what you see here in World of Warcraft, they have pre-made groups. These are all individuals who are out there running content, and they're short. So people didn't show up, or they're trying to get together people to run the similar content. You can either start your own group. You can also find a group looking for people, and they will tell you exactly what they're looking for. And they basically tell you the rules and everything like that, and you can choose which ones you want to go ahead and be part of. So PUGs are pickup groups, so basically allowing people to go ahead and collaborate, complete strangers collaborating on a variety of content. And typically it's groups, smaller groups who can't do all the content if they're a current group. They'll go ahead and they'll try to form a larger group. Like I said, 5 to 10 to 15 to 25 to 30 or 40 people to go ahead and accomplish the various different tasks in game.
Okay, so our next one. Okay, so if you think games are nothing but fun, there are some other terms besides that. There's a term that's called grinding. There's also a term called farming. And they usually aren't that much fun. So does somebody have a picture, and do they want to tell us about what is meant by farming?
I've got one of my characters in an area where I can farm by, if you can see my screen, there's these little flying creatures here, and if I wipe them out quickly. And they're easy because they're low level, but what I'm doing is I'm farming from them to get different materials. Some of these have linen cloth, and as a tailor, that might be something that I need. So I have to go around and kill a bunch of these just to get this material that I need, even though it's not like particularly challenging, and so far I'm only getting cracked eggshells. There's also farming for minerals. Here's a copper vein, so I could go around and get other materials for crafting with. But sometimes it's just boring. You're just running around killing a bunch of things to collect resources. I don't know if you hear my husband in the background, but he's commenting. The peanut gallery.
Your husband's obviously done this before. But farming's a lot like what we in education call drill and kill. There is similarities, and I see Grid typed in, it's a good time to multitask. Yes, it's very likely that maths gamers, when they play, they might be farming something and then also watching the esports on the other screen. Okay, so ooh, boss. Okay, who wants to show a boss?
I gotta switch my screen share.
Okay, no problem. And Lee Sheldon mentioned bosses a lot. So this is yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, the boss is who you run into at the end of a long raid, so that would be hard for us to have prepped up and ready. But I do have pictures from past boss experiences. So can you see my picture of our guild? We had just defeated this big water creature in the background called Immersius, and we were very proud of it. So I took a picture with them. And so here's some others of us posing with Immersius. And then I also have some action shots of us fighting against a boss that was actually 3 big characters, the Fallen Protectors. And so these ones, you need a big group. You've got to work together. It's a bigger challenge. You're going to fail, possibly multiple times. Here's my dead body. And it's the big challenge. So in a classroom, you know, Lee Sheldon talks about his midterm exam being a raid boss.
Okay, and our next word is quests. Who would like to take quests? Does anybody have a quest nearby?
Again, I'm running towards one. Okay, so basically quests are a fundamental piece of the game. This is really how most players will get their experience, and they'll be able to, it's also one of the things that drives the interaction within the game itself. So I was over there farming to show a demonstration of farming, so now I'm going to run over to the other side of my little spot here. So now in a game like World of Warcraft and a lot of other games, there's some sort of visual that you'll be able to see that basically lets you know that this person has something for you to do. So, example here is the exclamation point. So it can be yellow or blue. Notice the cursor turns yellow whenever I get close enough to him. You talk to him, he gives you the quest here, he tells you what to do, tells you what you need to do. In this case, he just wants some dust, because he's the dust trader. He'll give me some primal spirits for it. I complete the quest. There you go. That's a quest. You also have other quests here. And basically, they do a lot of sending you here and there and everywhere. So if you go out here to a zone, I will show an area where we have lots and lots of quests. So you can see little exclamation points here that you need to go ahead and do. You can see over here, if I look at my quests, it'll show me where I need to go ahead and do different quest items within a specific dungeon. So I can see different areas that you can navigate and go to. So those are quests. They're sending out to go ahead and gather things.
Okay, so our next one is Lore Giver. Is anybody ready for a Lore Giver? If not, I think I can take it. Okay, so a lore giver is somebody who tells you the story. And the screen that I have up right now, and hopefully it'll start moving pretty soon, but what I'm doing is I'm going up to the Veil of Eternal Blossoms, and I will be going inside to where there is a lore master. And here we go, as soon as it catches up. The person that I'm visiting is Lore Walker Cho. And what Lore Walker Cho says is okay, I've been heard that I got a blank screen, so let me try getting it again. Here we go. There we go. Lore Walker Cho. Here's what he tells me to do. As you explore our land, keep an eye out for objects of interest that might help us learn more of our past. Piece together enough of our history, and I may be able to share a story or two with you. So this is really the character inside the game who tells you the backstory, and also gives you gives you the rationale for why you're going forward. And then I have it right here. It's where he can go ahead and or he can go ahead and he will go ahead and tell my story. And I will try refreshing this to see if we can get it, because it'd be very cool if we could. If you can't see it, we will just continue on anyway. Okay, Quest Giver. Chris, if you'd like to take that one, because you were kind of showing it to us anyway.
Yes, exactly. So the quest giver, here's another quest giver that you see right here. And that quest giver has, again, the little exclamation point over top of it. And so basically, all you do is a quest giver is one who gives quests. And so you can see that they give you a quest. You can click on the quest. It tells you what you need to do. It gives you the objective of the quest. It tells you exactly what you're going to get if you are successful doing it. So basically, that is a quest giver and a quest.
So I'm just going back over to Lore Master Cho, and he is telling my story. I did an accomplishment for a legendary cloak, and what he's doing is now piecing in my character into this whole story of what happened into Pandaria. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're just going to give you the next, we're going to go ahead and give you the next 3 slides just as your questions for discussion. So Cam's going to be taking the first one.
One of the things I always think about when I hear about using game elements or terminology to replace the traditional vocabulary of education is that just a surface change, or is it a fundamental change to the experience that kids have? So I think that'd be a great question for us to discuss on the Google Plus community is, you know, when we look at how Lee Sheldon has applied these game elements, maybe we can talk about how Matt has applied them, how others have applied them. You know, does it fundamentally change the learning experience for kids, or are we just giving the same old things new names? So we can discuss that on the Google Plus community.
Okay, so for the next discussion question, and we'll be putting this up, is we really want to know what kind of gamification platforms you're using. Like Cam brought us into Chore Wars, and Matt, what he showed us was something that Mike Scotchko has developed called Game On, which can be put into WordPress. Now there's other ones out there. You might have your own even. We'd really like to know this, okay? And we really like you to share. Our games and simulation, we are working on an assessment project, so we would especially like to know about how you're doing the points, what would be considered assessment, what would be considered reward, and so we'll be putting this out there for you. And now, last but not least, Trish.
Yes, I have an article that I will put into the chat that I'm going to show you briefly the video of it, what it was is that the author of this piece saw this video, and it is all about what he called gamification gone wrong. The issue that a lot that have read the article have with it is that there is a blurring of the line between gamification and games-based learning. So I would say this article is posted in the community, and it would be good if you all read it, maybe watch this video and see what happens, and tell us what you think of how gamification or games-based learning can go wrong. And it is also tightly intertwined with trying to make sure that what we're doing is intrinsic and a self-motivator instead of just dangling carrots on sticks. So this would be something interesting to discuss.
Okay, Cam, take it away with Chore Wars.
So I believe that we have something like 24 adventurers now in our Chore Wars group, and I'm very excited to see people try it out. You know, it's just a fun way of trying a type of gamification, and believe me, I will not take it personally if anybody has criticisms of this tool. It's not my tool. We just thought that it would be fun to use, so we can certainly look at it critically. But one of the things I've just asked is if anybody has any suggestions for quests or adventures that are not on the list, then please feel free to share those with me. As the Dungeon Master, I'd be happy to add some.
Okay, so we'll be back here next week. We'll have another hangout. And we'll be putting up the multiplayer week 2 material. Look for that to go up on Sunday. We'll be putting the discussion questions up later tonight. We don't expect you to get to them tonight, so take a look at them bright and early Thursday morning if you're here in the U.S. If you're Matt and you're in Cairo, well, it'll be tomorrow evening that you'll be looking at them. So we are just about to wrap up. Remember, for hashtags, Metagame is us. GBL is game-based learning, always a nice place to tweet out to. And thank you for watching. And we'll be seeing you in the community. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.